الرحيم قتلوهم حتى لا تكون فتنة ليكون الدين كله لله. And fight them on until there is no more persecution, and the creed becomes a law in its entirety. And the word deen is plural, means religion, creed, faith, belief. And the word aqidah, also plural, means the articles of faith, tenet, the doctrine, the creed, faith, belief, and ideology. And furthermore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu, aridul mu'minina, aridul mu'minina alal kitab. O Prophet, rouse the believers to fight. And the inference is in relationship to the campaigning. And every war, there is a campaign. And it is affirmed by the Prophet ﷺ, who said, whosoever loves a people, then he is amongst them. And a man is with whom he loves. And loving the enemies of Allah is the greatest danger of the Muslims, because loving them necessitates conforming to them and following them, or at least the absence of rejection toward them. This is recorded by al-Bukhari in the Book of Manners. Now, brothers and sisters, in going back over the first ayat that I just read, وَخَذِلُوهُمْ حَتَّى لَا تَكُونَ فِتْنَةٌ لِيَكُونَ الدِّينُ كُلُّهُ لِلَّهِ. And fight them on until there is no more persecution, and creed becomes Allah in its eternity. If you look at the words deen and aqidah, you see the similarities are so close that it is not hard to say that one's deen is based on one's aqidah, and one's aqidah is based upon one's deen. But we should keep in remembrance that deen is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and aqidah is for the Muslim. Because deen is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is not an ideology. But because aqidah is for the Muslim, then aqidah is an ideology. I once took a Greek class with a sheikh by the name of Sheikh Kalash, rahimahullah. And he was originally from Saudi Arabia. And he taught a class over here to the imams after sitting on the class. And in the first class, we're actually putting together the educational curriculum, trying to decide just exactly what type of subjects he would give to us. Because it was the imam, just that went to him and requested that he helped to improve our education. And Sheikh Khalaj, he said that the first class that he wanted to teach was to teach the Muslims how to think like Muslims. And I thought that was a very profound statement, that he wanted us to first learn how to think like Muslims. And this is in relationship to one's aqidah. Because as it says here, in terms of what aqidah means, it says the articles of faith, the tenets, the doctrine, the creed, the faith, the belief, and it also says ideology. That's making sure that the Muslims have the correct ideology in relationship to their aqidah. It's important because when you go into the next ayat that I read, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu, haridul mu'minina ala al-kitab. O Prophet, rouse the believers to pray. It's talking about campaign. Because war is a campaign. And within that aspect of campaigning, the Muslims have to learn how to control their narrative. Because the war begins with the concept of narrative. The word jihad, it means struggle. It is often used, the terminology is often used in relationship to war. But in reality, it means struggle. It's a general term. Now, within that category of jihad, there is qital. And qital is the physical war, the physical combat. But jihad, struggle, takes place on many levels. And usually, before it reaches the level of physical combat, it begins with the concept of the narrative. Because within the narrative, each party who has opposing ideologies begin to campaign and justify just exactly what is the justification of their declaration of war. So understanding the narrative is very important. Illustration. On September 11th, 2001, 2 of 4 planes went into what was referred to or called the World Trade Center. And for the first couple of days, we all sat there, those of us who are old enough to remember it, we all sat there and looked on the TV set while they replayed over and over again as those buildings were coming down and those thousands of people were running through the streets in New York in a state of total trauma. But that within the category of a few days, they added another film, another video. And they showed the buildings coming down again, once again, collapsing, and they showed all thousands of people running through the streets of New York in a state of trauma. But this time they added to that video another video, and immediately after that they showed the Muslims who were celebrating. And what happened is that those 2 videos together caused so much anger amongst the American people that immediately the military recruitment began to increase. People wanted to go to war. In fact, they were saying, I don't want justice, I want revenge. Everybody started putting American flags on their cars. The American flag was a representation of America saying, this is a war against Islam. And even Muslims in their ignorance was running around with the American flags on the car, not understanding exactly what those American flags were representing at the time. And then they used that film to go all over the world and invade places. They said that the people who supposedly flew those 4 planes were from Saudi Arabia. They were supposed to have been under the leadership of Osama bin Laden. But yet they went into Afghanistan under the disguise that bin Laden was in Afghanistan. He wasn't there. And then they went in there, they created a war, and they occupied that land for over 20 years. Under the disguise that this was connected to 9/11. And then they kicked the door into Iraq, claimed that Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. They went in here and found him somewhere in a hole, brought him out of that hole, and publicly hanged him. And then after they hung him, they said, oh, there was no weapons of mass destruction. Oops, my bad. Well, what the heck? We wanted to kill him anyway. A 13-year-old girl was gang raped by a bunch of American heroes, so-called American heroes, brave American soldiers, raped a 13-year-old Iraqi girl, and her and her 16-year-old sister was killed afterwards. I could go on for several Jumas and tell you the atrocities that took place against people in the name of 9/11. 3 years ago, Donald Trump, he brought this issue up that the Muslims were celebrating 9/11. And the news stations, they went on live and they said, this man is a bigot against the Muslims. There was no video. That the video didn't exist. But those who are old enough, remember, you saw the video, I saw the video. In fact, there is a news, not Newsday, but a news report, daily news report, where the people were interviewing me and they were asking me about the video. And like a fool, I was admonishing my own people and saying that we don't celebrate the catastrophes of other people. But little did I realize that that video was the video of Muslims celebrating the Eid. And they connected that video to the World Trade Center, and they used that as a justification all over the world and create a war against the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now all this is coming out now, being manifested. That's why the news people, when Donald Trump put it up, they said, what are you talking about? There's no video, there's no such video. Because they're right, there is no such video. That video that they used was the video of the Muslims who were celebrating their holidays. But instead of showing some remorse, instead of developing the attitude of tawbah, of repentance, you don't see any remorse from this man. You don't see any remorse from these people, which leads me to the fact that there's a possibility. I'm looking at it. I don't know if these people actually got a soul. Because when you got a soul, you got a conscience. And no matter how treacherous you are, somewhere along the line, if you're a human being with a soul, it causes you to show some sense of remorse. This man does not have a sense of remorse. You don't care anything about the atrocity that he did in the so-called name of 9/11. You don't care about it. He will not admit, he will not even realize, he will not still admit that Hussein didn't have weapons of mass destruction. He just will admit the fact that he didn't find the weapon. And just chalk it up to saying, whoops, as I said before, my bad, we want to kill him anyway. The world's a better place with him dead. As if they played the role of the Creator. In 1948, these same people gave permission to the Zionists to go back into Israel. Even though in the Quran and the Torah, and even in their own book, the Bible, the last chapter of Malachi states that the Jews were forbidden to go back into Israel because of the fact that their Lord was angry with them. And he ended it, the covenant. In the book of Malachi, their own book in the Bible, it says, I'm almost quoting it, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to them that not only have you been dismissed as my people and the covenant that I have with you because of your disobedience and all the things that you have done and the slaying of the prophets and the things like that. But then he took the position of saying that I will turn this day, my day, toward a new people. And these people will worship me from the rising of the sun all the way to the setting, and my name shall be great. Allahu Akbar. It's right there in Malachi. You can open up the book right now and still find it. And the Torah true Jews, quoting from the Torah, have said, we the Jews are not supposed to be in Israel because part of the curse that was put on us was that we were forbidden to go back to Israel. Yet this man gave credence for them to go in there and to take the land that was being occupied by the Arabs. And then to create and build walls and create an apartheid for the sake of ethnic cleansing. And it was all part of a diabolical plan. And what is this diabolical plan? The ultimate finish of the plan. The plan can't be finished until ultimately this man tears down the masjid that sits on top of their Temple Mount. And they're coming very close to doing it. Now, brothers and sisters, inshallah, when that happens, if it happens, then the whole aspect of jihad now moves from the level of Farad Kufaya to Farad Ayn. Not Farad Kufaya anymore, it's Farad Ayn. And then, according to Sheikh Albani, if there is a presence of an international Amir, and the international Amir sees this act, which affects all the Muslims on the planet, because that masjid affects all the Muslims on the planet. That masjid was established by Allah's Messenger, alayhi salam. That's not a Palestinian thing. That's not an Arab thing. That's a believer's thing. It becomes the responsibility. If an Amir, an international Amir, calls for the jihad on the basis of Farad Ayn, then the test of all the Muslims on the planet will be issues in relationship to their Iman. Whether or not there's true Iman there, whether there's hypocrisy in our hearts. It's a serious situation. Because the reason why I'm giving this khutbah is because they're mentioning it. They're showing documentaries of the Zionists in the city demanding that the masjid be torn down. This was the goal. This was the objective from the very beginning. Ethnic cleansing. To remove the Arabs out of that area. Remove the Muslims out of that area. And then the reestablishment of a Temple Mount that was forbidden by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to understand this. We have to reflect upon this. Because I've tried to summarize the first aspect of the khutbah by saying this. What makes an international Amir? Is it territory? Does it mean that in order to be the world Amir, you're going to have a territory that occupies the whole world? Or do we follow the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What made him Amir? There were two baths in the beginning. Those baths were the baths at Aqaba. In the first bath at Aqaba, there was a few people. In the second bath at Aqaba, there was approximately 70 people coming down from a city called Yathrib. They took the bath to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When they took that bath, it gave Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam an authority. It gave him the right to say, "Inni amru bil khamsin." Amru, he became a mayor. And Yathrib, technically speaking, at that point, was no longer Yathrib. It was the city of Medina, city of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He hadn't even been there yet. But it was his city on the basis of the bay'ah. So the bay'ah is what establishes the territory. The territory doesn't establish the bay'ah. This is very important, brother, because from that bay'ah, in the Prophet saying, "Inni a'udhu bil khamsin," he followed it by saying, "I command 5 things." What are those 5 things? Number 1, that you establish and maintain the community. Number 2, that you listen to the command. Number 3, that once you listen to the command, and of course, as long as it does not violate the Quran and the Sunnah, then you must obey the command. And number 4, that you make the hijrah. And number 5, that you have peaceable Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, just want to use this short time in the second khutbah to clarify something. Because as I've been saying in the last couple of weeks, a lot of people have been talking about why I use the term indigenous Muslim. That it sounds like I'm alluding to the point of racism. Let me make this clear to you. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, that we have split you up into different tribes and nations. Not that you should despise one another, not for the sake of despising one another, but that you should know one another. What does that mean? Well, when we study the Quran, in Surah Al-Araf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that there were 12 tribes that were with Musa alayhi salam. Each one of those tribes had a captain, and each tribe was given a drinking hole. So there were 12 drinking holes. And each tribe knew where their drinking hole was. So the establishment of groups is only for the basis of knowing where your drinking hole is. But as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, we didn't establish you or split you up into groups or tribes so that you should despise one another. It's not the fact that one tribe is better than another. Rasulullah has already made that clear by saying the Arab is not better than the non-Arab, nor is the non-Arab better than the Arab. Black's not better than the white's not better than the black. I mean, we understand that there's no room for racism in the kingdom of Allah. But the reason why you always hear me use the terminology in terms of indigenous Muslim is because I know that I got the edge on this man. When I say I have the edge on this man, it means that because of my historical background, if you remember in the national policy, I pointed out C was a commonality based upon historical background. That's what brings communities together. That's one of the things, because we talked about the psychosocial, the multi-determinants that brings community together. And one of them was the historical experience. Based on my historical experience, based on the fact that I am the son or the children of slaves, I got this man on a barrel, and I know that. You see, unfortunately, when my other brothers, my Muslim brothers who I love so much, when they come from different countries, they come from Saudi Arabia, or they come from Pakistan, or they come from wherever, you know, but the fact that they're Muslims is why I love them. When they come over here, they don't have the same edge I have. If they complain about the system, this man immediately says to them, well, look, you can go back where you belong. Get the heck out of my country. You don't have a right to complain about the system. Because you agreed that when you came over here to get a piece of the pie. And therefore, you got to accept the system of local, regional, state, and federal. All the laws, you have to accept it. You can't complain. He can't say that to me. If he tells me that, the first thing I'm going to tell him is that that's counterfeit when it comes to me. If he tries to tell me the same thing that he tells my brothers and sisters who are Muslims from different parts of the world, that you should be grateful to be here in America, I'm going to tell him, you should be grateful that I'm here in America. Why? Because my people were brought over here in chains. They didn't ask to come over here. You brought them over in chains against their will. And then this American dream that you're telling me that I got to be grateful for, you built that on the backs of their labor. So you should be grateful to me. But all gratitude is due to Allah. And then if you start talking about freedom, that you eventually gave us freedom, 179,000 of my ancestors fought for their freedom. And it wasn't based on the fact that they fought so they could become a citizen of the United States. They fought for their freedom, and it was agreed upon that once they got their freedom, you would give them the right of self-determination. And that right of self-determination was called 40 acres of the union. You reneged on the agreement. And so the reason why I don't let him forget that is because eventually I'm going to collect on it, inshallah. That's the plan. I want my 40 acres of the music. I want my right for self-determination. I want my right to establish my own system, my own economical, political, social, penal system based on the laws that have been established by Allah and His Messenger, alayhi wa sallam, and legally and historically, he can't say nothing because he owes it. That's why I keep using that. Other than that, all the races, the generations, no matter what part, we're all one brotherhood. We're all part of one body. But eventually, my brothers and sisters that come over to the country will be able to recognize and appreciate the fact of what we're doing over here. And understand that that gives a basis of where the true leadership lies. And join and become part of that leadership. And as they join and become part of that leadership, and we reestablish that concept of Khilafah in the most powerful country in the world, that understand that as this begins to spread from the nucleus, and people begin to take bath all over the world, and you establish the system of the international Amir. And so if such a catastrophe that happens, what looks like it's going to happen when they take down that masjid, then everyone will be prepared to understand where the authority lies at. And immediately that authority goes into action in the declaration of jihad. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala